One is I've never made a graven image, and the other two are none of your business. But I've disobeyed them all. That makes me a sinner. So our belief is that God recognized that we're sinful and the sin nature dominates, just as a rotten place on an apple will eventually dominate. So we believe that's why he sent Christ into the world in his generosity to say, even though you have fallen short, in grace I will give you Christ. So the Old Testament commands a tithe, and in the New Testament we are commanded to be generous, to give proportionately, and to give because our motivation is not to earn God's favor, but our motivation is one of gratitude and to be compassionate toward people who are hurting, because God has been compassionate to us. Now, I love the standard of the tithe, but in the New Testament we're told, just give as you've been prospered. And evangelical Christians have a terrible record of only giving 3%, when I think probably it should be more than 10%. The Bible talks about tithes and offerings. The illustration I use with our people was when our first child was born, we were blessed to have a babysitter who lived right next door. And she was not only a good babysitter and convenient, she did extra work. She did dishes, she straightened rooms. She was just really helpful. And I said, Patty, how much do you charge for babysitting? She said 50 cents an hour. You can tell how long ago that's been. But then her second child came, and let's just say he was a little more challenging. And said, now your responsibility is doubled. How much do you charge? She said, oh, we had a good relationship at this time. She said, oh, Mr. Russell, just give whatever you want to give. And my question is, do you think she expected more or less than 50 cents an hour? I think that she expected more. And in the Old Testament, God required, as Rabbi Rapport was mentioning, 10%. That was just the beginning. In the New Testament, he says, just give as you've been prospered. But you think about how much we've been blessed in the United States of America and how our health and our families, and how can we but pour out more than 10% of what we've been giving? And so the motivation for the Christian is not just because we're commanded or to earn God's favor, but because God has been gracious to us in granting us forgiveness through Jesus Christ. We ought to pour out in response to anybody who's in need and hurting around us.
These motivations are important, and I'd like to ask Dr. Taylor to talk to us a little bit about, you've seen some things from different perspectives, that sometimes the donor can be tainted a bit by the giving.
True. Well, thank you. I have the luxury of getting to add a voice to several very good voices on the Christian tradition and its antecedents. And I want to just do two things. One is connect to worship, and also try to make some connections to the notion of corporate philanthropy for the Christian tradition. The greatest commandment is loving God and loving your neighbor. That's what we were taught by Jesus. And many of us who've tried to raise funds know that putting a face on a cause is very important. Jesus put his face on that cause. He said, inasmuch as you do these things for the least of these, my brethren, you do them for me. So he personalized it and said, if you visit someone in jail, if you clothe someone, you do this for me. And in contrast, if you fail to do this for me. This is an important part of the piety of philanthropy in my experience for Christians, is that it is an act of worship and devotion. And it gets us back to that question, how much did Jesus do for you? That's how much you should do for others. So it goes well beyond a kind of a percentage. The other thing I wanted to bring in, because really the piety about philanthropy that I grew up with in the Presbyterian tradition is much more the notion of stewardship. Stewardship was very much emphasized. And also in the Presbyterian tradition, the sovereignty of God. The sovereignty of God is about that God is Lord of everything. There is absolutely nothing in life that isn't already God's. And so we live a life of gratitude in exchange for that. What that means is that there is just no sphere of your life where the principles of philanthropy don't apply. And this is where we begin to get into the notion of corporate philanthropy. Let me start with an illustration of somebody I admire very much, my husband, who is his hobby is photography. We moved to Shelbyville, and his brother built us a dark room in the basement. We were on a septic system for the first time in our lives, so we thought we better read up on this. And he started to read up on what you do with chemicals when you need to dispose of them from a dark room. The more he read, the more worried he got. He was concerned about the water supply of our neighbors downstream. And so he now has the self-discipline to order the correct containers, go to the correct drop-off site in Louisville during the business hours, and his time is billable. So this is time he's not in his office billing anyone, so that he can do the right thing by our neighbors. I was very impressed by that. And in the notion of the sovereignty of God and the stewardship concept, that same way of thinking needs to apply to us in our workplaces. It means that if you work for a bank, and your actions might affect whether someone's going to lose their home, and you're in the mortgage business, you need to be pretty careful how you handle that paperwork. It means that if you're in the coal mining business, then you are also concerned about the water supply of the people downstream from you. So corporate philanthropy isn't just about giving gifts to the funds for the arts or the United Way. It's the extension of the very same Christian principle of love of neighbor and love of God. I did, as you alluded to, I did work for the Ford Foundation, and I know that being in the position of being the one who gives money away can be, it can really affect all of your relationships. Your ideas seem more glittering to people. Your jokes are funnier. So this is actually another argument, in a sense, for corporate giving. To slip your funds in there with others and make some collective decisions is a sort of humbling and a more careful way not to end up having philanthropy be the thing that calls attention to you. So, thank you.
I'm going to ask now, and we can have some more questions in a bit, but I'm going to ask a bit of very practical advice, because I suspect I know the answer, and I suspect I've been doing something wrong for at least 25 years, and probably longer. Almost today, like almost every day in my life, I will leave my office and I will walk a block and a half to where I eat lunch. Don't ask why I eat lunch in the same place every day, but I do. And I will pass a person or two who will ask me for change on the street. And for whatever reason, I have imbibed from what I will call our civic religion. I would not blame any of the fine pastors that I've been privileged to worship with for years. But from our civic religion, that you don't really help people on the street, that they don't really need the help, that they probably have problems you're making worse, etc. And I talk about that with colleagues, and we talk about that from time to time. What should we do? And I can tell you from observation what most of the people in downtown Louisville do. I wouldn't speak anywhere else. And I am always struck by the fact that in no faith tradition that I've ever encountered is there the investigation of the needy. That instead the stories are about helping the needy. But I don't know the answer to that. So I'm gonna take this moment to give some practical advice. Who here would like to give me practical advice? And you're all welcome to. I mean, is the right answer really that what I should do before I head out is I should make sure I have a couple of dollars in my pocket and truthfully, I don't mean to say that I'm the richest person in the world, but if I gave away $2 or $3 a day as I walked to lunch, it wouldn't matter a whit in the world. I don't want to harm anybody. I want to do the right thing, not because I think I'm going to have a problem in any sort, eternally or otherwise, if I don't. But I don't want to do the right thing. So what should I do? Anybody have a thought on what